Yours.
All right. I even got the recording has started in my ear. So welcome everyone. Here to talk Ansible records Ansible, ARA. I think I already missed on the name, but we'll get through that. Basically, I'm Josh Vandray. Let's actually click down here. Real quick introduction of who I am. I'm a 17-year network veteran. I'm now a senior network automation consultant with a company called Network to Code. We like to affectionately call ourselves NTC. And then for me, I've been automating networks with Python, and then I moved to Ansible with 2.0 release. So we're on 2.10. It's getting up there as far as the number of years out there. So if at some point you want to connect with me, I've got my couple socials down below there. We'll see that a little bit later. And I just want to real quick briefly mention Network Code. Pretty proud there. We're a network automation solution provider. And so we work to bridge the gap between software development, DevOps, and network engineering. So really helping to bring the network engineering teams into the world of automation. So covered the introduction. We're here to talk about Ansible records Ansible. It's really a great tool to be able to see what's happening in your playbooks. So there's going to be some questions. I'll get into a few other pieces from it. And then at the end of this we'll get into demos. I think the demos are the piece that really sells it even further. So, and along the way, if there's questions, if there's a way to send them interactively through BlueJeans, sounds great. Otherwise, feel free to just jump in and ask along the way as well. So recording Ansible, a couple things here is that it saves data related to Ansible playbook execution. So it really helps to start to understand what's going on with your playbooks. We'll see that coming up as well. This is all done with it uses a callback plugin. So as part of your Ansible, it's built into the Ansible structure. It's not really making any significant changes to how Ansible works. It's just a install and set a couple environment variables, and away we go. The app itself is Django Python. It's a Django Python application. As I've gone into it, everything has been very familiar to me, which it means it's a common framework, and it should feel comfortable to be able to navigate within it. At least from my perspective, it has been so. There's an API REST framework as well, which I think also unlocks the power available of why you would look at doing something with ARA here. And of course, it's a web UI component to it as well, so that way you can see what's going on without having to just go through the API. So first off, the why. Why would you want to be looking at ARA? Why does this come into play? Looking at troubleshooting is one of the first things. If you work in a distributed environment with multiple folks, you'll be able to see what is happening on other executions, not just what you're doing. And that gives you the kind of, hey, it worked on my computer. What's different about the other person's computer? One of the things I am really liking as well is if you want to view trends. We'll look at some of the API actions that are available and what kind of data points there are. We see the sharing of playbook executions kind of goes back into the troubleshooting aspect. And then also it's an API into your playbooks. So as you want to expose what you're doing, this has a wonderful API that we can dive into and see what's going on and start to get some trends. So I've talked a little bit about it, but I think from the callback plugin, it's best just to take what's straight on the ARA website. So if you go to the website there at the bottom of ara.recordsansible.org, we see this information. We have the human on the top left, runs an Ansible playbook. The number 2 there has the callback hooks. So within Ansible, this is all native to it. It sends a callback, which then sends it to the ARA API, returns those results, and does the return hooks, does everything within there. But then number 4, we see that saving to a database. In this demo, I'm sticking with the SQLite database, so it's just running on this environment. But if you need to write to a MySQL or Postgres It's fully capable and able to leverage those higher performing databases. So getting started, it's once you've got the ARA API up and running, and I'm running this in a Docker container in this demo that we've got coming up, it's installing Ansible and ARA, which can be done right here. And let's see if okay, that's not highlighting, but Python, with just a Python 3 pip install. And then we set the callback plugins. That is correct there with the $ Python 3. That's awesome to have that auto-filled, where we set the callback plugins in the environment. And then we tell it that we're going to use the HTTP client and then set the API server itself of where it's going out to. This right now is on localhost, so if it from a testing perspective, and what we'll do for a demo, we'll actually see it recording over a network. So, all right, so I want to jump right in then to looking at the demos that or a demo environment that I've got for this, and we'll review the UI, take a look at the API, and run a couple playbooks to see what this looks like. All right, we should see a web browser here at this point. And so this is the primary screen. When I click on ARA, it's coming in here. And what I'm looking at here is we got status. We see right away some red is jumping out at us that, hey, I've had some playbooks that failed. I was having some troubleshooting. When the playbook was actually executed, the time that it took to run it, and this is where I was doing some troubleshooting, was I was actually upgrading from 2.10.4 to 2.10.5, because if we take a look here, as we look at each of the records for the playbook executions, we get each of the versions of the Ansible that we're running this on. And then we also get the controller. So off on another computer, I've got my iMac, and then we see here this is running from the Mac that I'm sharing this with. It gives us the name or the path of the file. So we've got a few things I've been doing, working with some Ansible network collections on adding sites. And so we can see add sites or getting data. And then we have some other more details about it, what labels were called, what hosts, plays, tasks, what the results look like, and files. So we'll dive into one here. And when I come in here, we are able to expand the hosts. And what I absolutely love is being able to come down here and see these tasks. We see the duration of each task, how long it took. So as we go through, we can start to analyze, okay, we expect a playbook that's normally takes 10 minutes. All of a sudden it's taking 15 minutes. What's going on from a timing perspective, or just from that time? We see here as we go through, I have one task that takes 30 seconds of one. I threw a pause in there because I want to show what that looks like coming up as well. It's got the action, whether it's what it's actually doing. I have a lot of set facts. I have some URI module calls. Then when you go into it, you get a whole bunch more information. We've got our Ansible facts that are part of the Ansible execution. So digging in, if you need to look at the facts, I'm looking at some variables here. So these have all been imported. And just, it gives a lot of detail, and it gives the changed. I'm going to see if I have another execution that has some more detail on that. Here's another good one I want to share. This is a playbook that I got that turns on some Telegraph containers to monitor a few things. We see, first off, it gives us our tags. So if you're using tags and with your playbooks around, hey, I want to execute this for this particular case, I have Telegraph, I have Prometheus, and Grafana all being set up on the same playbook. And I also have each of those tasks gone down to a tag level. So when I only want to set up the Telegraph instances or make changes to that, we're able to see what the tags are. And then it goes through and gives us some more information. Let's take a look at another one. And that's probably kind of small. So I'll try to come up. So this is a Docker container executable, and the Docker container module. We're going to say that we're going to have 4 ports that will get exposed as part of this. The host name, we've got some images. So this is a custom Docker image that I have running there, and what the volume mounts are. Hopefully I'm not doing anything too crazy. And all this information is just, it's part of the native. Ansible's gotten it. The callback plugin for ARA has picked up on it and has sent this over. It's now available in the database. We've got it changed because I did not actually need to, it was already up and running. And then we get the container. So a little bit more information. And so just a lot of great detail there. And come back here. One thing, as you're getting this, if this becomes something part of your regular environment, I'm going to actually kick off a playbook, that one with the long running 30 seconds here. So it's running right now over on a different machine. And we can now see that we've got a task that's in a running state. So not only does this have playbooks that are completed, we can filter and change this over to a running and see anybody that has the appropriate plugin settings set up for the callback plugin. We get to see that data right here in the console. So go ahead, clear the filters, and now that playbook has fully executed. And I think there's something going on with my Mac that I'm sending some things over. So and then as we go in, we get the exact same, all the data again of the actions, of what we did, and so on. If there were any skip tasks, reachable, failed, it really gives you that the entire data set. The next piece then that I want to dig into is the API, which I think is something awesome as I've looked at this here. And let's see, demo gods are with me. So as we go through the REST framework and we take a look at things, it's going to have some summaries for labels. So I've got a tags all, check false, and I've only, with this particular environment that I've got running here, has only had a single tag. But we can dig into then, we can get task level detail through the API. So when I've looked at this and compared this to an AWX type environment, which also has an API, when I say AWX, I'm saying AWX Tower. To me, they're virtually still the same thing with a little bit of different flavor to it. But you aren't able to dig into each of at the task level from what I've seen in the jobs. So if you want to, okay, you have an important task that you're running time and time again that you want to benchmark its performance, you're able to come in here. And one of the key values that I see right here is, I'll make that a little bigger, is duration. So we get that, we can look at, okay, the name of the task, get all the names. Each task execution has its own ID. And so as we query this, we can then go ahead and take a look at, is this task execution getting quicker? Is it getting slower? And just the amount of detail and the connections that are available through the API. I haven't had a ton of time to explore it all together, but I'm sure from what I'm seeing right now, we're able to get quite a bit of detail that you can navigate through with the API. And then as we continue digging through, we can get into the playbooks and each of the hosts that are there, the results. Just what I've seen is a great product to be able to start to explore. And really that's the big part of this. And overall, it is open source, so I don't think that I have not seen any kind of associated cost with it. And like I said, this is running a container for me. Being able to run the container, start the container, you start and you make the changes to your environment, and away you're going. I think that's pretty much what I've got planned to cover on this topic here. I'd love to hear some things, or if you want me to try out some things within the UI.
Hey, David here. Hello.
Yes, David.
Um, there's two great things that you can also show. If you click on the action link, and sorry about the UI, like I'm not much of a front end person. We accept patches. Scroll down a little bit and click on that action.
Oh, all right, I'll go back into one. Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
It's all right. Um, yep,
This right.
sure. Then click on the on any action. Yeah, the column, the other column. Um,
Oops. I still got some things that I didn't share before.
yeah. So ARA saves the playbook and role files too. So when you click on the action, it actually sends you down to the line where the action took place. Um, so if your playbooks change and you want to see, 2 weeks ago what the playbook file looked like, you have it there. The playbook and role files, they're all there.
That is
And
awesome.
then and then the other thing too is if you gathered facts as part of your playbook, there's a little host facts link that you can, if you go back to the previous page.
Let's see if I got facts on this one.
Hosts, and then it's the first thing, the first column. Nope, on the left.
Oh, yes, the facts.
Yeah. So you have all the host facts there, and like I use that a lot because like, oh no, what's this OS family called again? Does it have a capital letter, or what's this fact called, and what's the data format look like? I personally use that a lot.
Yes, this is awesome.
JXN in the chat asks, there has to be some additional lag when passing data from the controller to the DB ARA host via a callback plugin. Is it noticeable? Excellent question. There is a blog post I wrote back in November on the ARA website that measures this overhead. Of course, there's an overhead because, well, instead of doing nothing, there's a callback that sends data to an API, saves it to the database. So there's an overhead. But the objective is that I need to improve my SEO. Yeah, it's the lattice one. Yep.
Yes, this was a good blog post.
Yeah. So basically, I just measured basically what was the overhead, and it's getting better. In the latest versions, we introduced threading, and it doesn't work so well with SQLite because SQLite is you can run into database lock contention when you have multiple writes at the same time. But it works great with MySQL and Postgre. That's what I tended to run it with, and there's there is an overhead. I'm not gonna lie to you or anything, but at least for me, it's worth it. And we can improve it over time.
It's definitely. I mean, in the end, the way I look at this is helping to provide metrics around your Ansible as well.
Yeah, I mean if you lose say a minute like over a large playbook or something. But you end up figuring out, hey, this task is wasting like 10 minutes of my time every time, and then you optimize this one task. Well, you're now saving time, like at the end of the day, right? So by introspecting your playbooks. So that's what I mean by hopefully, you know, the overhead is worth it.
Yes,
Um,
anything that adds, to me, anything that adds some enriched data gives us more insight about what's going on. And I definitely think it's well worth it. Just also looking at if one person keeps on having an issue with a playbook, it's nice to be able to understand what's going on.
yeah, it's also valuable in terms of human time. Like if you send, I don't know, a new employee, send him to a CI job, and he has like 10,000 lines of output, of Ansible playbook output to parse through. You know, it might take a while to figure out what went wrong and what happened. Whereas if it's an ARA, you know, it jumps at you what the issue was.
Yes.
Uh, and I got another question from the chat from Kevin. Kevin asks, does ARA have any mechanisms for access control to the information that it collects from your plays? Very basic. It's not granular. So either you have access to it or you don't. And by that I mean it's not built for multi-tenancy, right? So you have your ARA instance, and there's two toggles. There's one that requires authentication for writes, and there's one that requires authentication for reads. So you could have a read-only instance, if you will, by only requiring authentication for writes, for example. But so there's two ways to do authentication. One is built into Django. ARA doesn't really do anything with that. It's just like Django authentication. And the other is again from Django. Django supports external authentication. So I know of users that hooked up ARA to LDAP, for example. So people can use LDAP plugins to authenticate. Um, I can go. I can go to the next question unless you have something.
Yeah, no, that I was trying to find. So I need to get that other playbook that I just ran over, specifically around the question about the output to the console. I'm not seeing any additional output, right? So being a callback plugin, that's under the hood. But in earlier testing before I got the proper host, it does give some output if it can't write to the API.
Yeah. So the ARA callback is not like an std out callback. So it won't. Its purpose is not to print the console output differently or add information like other callbacks, like profile tasks or YAML, or there's a lot of callbacks out there. It really just takes the data from Ansible and then links it to the API. There is some output, for example, when you run a playbook with SQLite, it might want to run SQL migrations automatically, so you don't need to run them. There's going to be like a little block of text around migrations at the beginning, but otherwise it stays quiet.
Go ahead.
And Adam asked also, does ARA log at the same level as Ansible on the system? So if you put in, like VVV, ARA takes whatever Ansible sends to it. So if by way of increasing verbosity, Ansible sends more data, ARA will pick it up. Otherwise, by default, it picks up about the equivalent of two Vs, I'll say. So if you run Ansible playbook without any verbosity, the console output that you get is very terse. It won't be much, right? But ARA picks up more than that because Ansible sends the data anyway. Yep. So hopefully that answers the question.
If I were asking it, yeah, it definitely matches what I'd be looking for. So, but and then next question was on the respect the hidden output for secrets and such. So I haven't seen that come across that, David. I'm going to defer to you still on that one as the definite expert
Fair
on it
enough.
here.
Yeah, fair enough. So yes, generally speaking, ARA defers that to the Ansible mechanism that takes care of sanitizing the output. So ARA doesn't do anything special by itself. It kind of asks Ansible, hey, I have this bunch of data, sanitize it for me. Then Ansible does the work, the same work that you would have like in console output to sanitize the keys. And then it takes that output and then sends it to the API. So if you have something no log, it won't be in clear text in ARA, for example, right? Otherwise, another thing that tends to be sensitive that ARA does have a safeguard for is ignoring certain files or certain facts. So pretend you run a playbook that requires a token to be set in your environment. So you do export secret token something something. This would show up in the Ansible underscore env fact. And ARA saves that, so it would show up there. However, Ansible env is not saved by default because it tends to be used for that kind of stuff, right? And then the other thing is, and I don't recommend doing that, but if you do happen to have passwords in clear text in Ansible variable files, pretend you have, I don't know, group vars all, and then in there you have passwords and secrets, they will be picked up by ARA. But you can supply a pattern. It's a configuration. I think it's called ignored files or something like that. And then you can pass a pattern so that ARA won't save those. So yeah, hopefully that that covers that. Lots of great questions tonight.
Yes.
Adam asks, is it easy to turn this off and on, for instance, if you would only want it on during development? So if the callback is enabled, it's going to work. If the callback is not enabled, it's not going to work. So if you this one export Ansible callback plugins line that Josh is showing right now, if you don't export this variable and tell Ansible to load the callback, it'll be off, right? But it's not going to be off. It's just not going to be enabled, right? So,
Yep. Yeah. If I were going through this, I would be just setting these for when I do want it enabled, and then, or using the export as shown here, and then using the unset command to get in the environment to get rid of those to control from the on-off perspective. Yeah.
And this Python 3 ARA setup callback plugins command is nothing magic. It just returns the path to the callback plugin, because it turns out that it's complicated to know where the callback plugin is, because, well, you know, depending on your Linux distribution, depending on your version of Python, depending on whether you're using a virtual environment or not, and so on, it's going to change location. You don't need to hard code it. You can use this setup helper that exists.
Now let me let me share what that does here, right? So the executing, it just, like I said, just gives that path.
Yep, and there's a couple more helpers too. You can do ARA that setup.env, ARA that setup dot Ansible too.
Ansible 2 like that.
No, Ansible, sorry.
All right.
Yep. So, this is what your Ansible.cog file might look like. But again, this is hard coded, so if the path happens to change, the callback wouldn't get loaded.
Great question. Awesome. No more
Did you
questions.
have did you have other stuff, Josh?
That actually covered what I've seen so far, right? This is a product that I'm loving. I need to get do a few more deployments of it and get it into use it a lot more. So if there's anything else you'd like me to highlight.
So there's also a CLI, but I don't want to put you on the spot either. So I can demo it if you'd like.
Yeah, why don't we?
Um,
I'll switch sharing because the CLI I have not gone into too much. Again, in most of my space, I'm doing a lot with APIs and such. So I will.
sure. Um, so before I move on to the CLI, JXN asks on the chat, any gotchas using ARA in combination with AWX, Rundeck, or other unattended Ansible running solutions? No, in the sense that wherever Ansible runs, the only thing you need to do is to do like pip install ARA, enable the callback plugin, and then that's it, right? You can configure the callback further, set up a remote API server and such. But specifically for AWX, it's kind of tricky, but that's not because of ARA. It's because of how AWX works. There is an issue in the GitHub repo. I can find you a link real quick. Here it is. So you'll find the here. I'll put it in the chat. So it's a long-standing issue. Not that it's a problem. It works. I've seen it work and I've had it work before, but it's not straightforward because AWX might have virtual env, so you need to install inside that virtual env, and then how do you enable callback plugins? That's in the AWX settings, but all the info you need are in there. So hopefully that should help you getting started. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully that works. Mm-hmm.
And while that's going on, I'll answer Kevin's next question here around behavior when the callback plugin fails. As experienced firsthand earlier today, the playbook does still execute. So
the worst case scenario that can happen, and I don't have a good solution for that this time, is if like there's a big latency between the callback plugin and the server, that's going to impact the playbook performance a lot. But if it's timing out all the time, that might slow it down even further. But Ansible doesn't have a mechanism for preventing callbacks from doing that. I mean, I could add like a sleep 9,000 inside a callback in Ansible, but just wait. It doesn't time out or give up or anything. So hopefully you can see my screen.
Got it.
Yes. All right. Cool. So I'm gonna run the CLI with data from this demo website that you can also check out. It's public and it has real data. Um, so there's a CLI that uses the API. So I can do ARA playbook list. Oh no, the size of the font is not great. Hang on. Can I Cliff? Let me what this looks like. All right, a little bit better. Forgive the width wrapping around. Um, so our playbook list is more or less this same view, right? Which also means you can search by Ansible version, by controller, by name, by path, and so on. So I could do our playbook list path OpenStack Ansible, and it would pick up only the playbooks that ran, which matches that path. You can search for status, so I could search for failed, and it would only show me the playbooks that failed. Then you can also drill down, just like you would by clicking on the playbook here, and say, okay, see, let's find out why this one playbook failed. So I could do ARA result list playbook 9. It turns out that I've already written this before. So I have all the results for that playbook. Let me find that. And you see you have IDs here. That's not great for humans, but there's this thing called resolve, which will take care of resolving that to something that humans can read. So you have the playbook, the task, the host. And then I can also show this result. So our result show, this one. So you have, the information about the result. You also have a link to the playbook itself. I'm gonna pass here with content to get the content of the result. Sometimes it can be bulky. It's not meant for printing nicely on the CLI. And the CLI framework allows for returning data in several formats. Not something that ARA does. It's provided by the framework. But I can return the content here, that task of that result rather, and I can see that it failed because repository timed out. No, not found actually. So I know why this playbook failed. So there's a lot of commands here. I invite you to check it out. Let me show you something maybe interesting. So there are metrics in ARA. If I can do, again, OpenStack, Ansible. By default, it will aggregate by action. Let me get a little bit more data here. So you can see how many times you call each action. What's the duration total of these actions in aggregate? And then what's the average, across these executions? You can do the same thing, but then aggregate by path, perhaps. So you can see in which playbook file or role file you're spending the most time on. And then what else is there? Our task metrics. You can aggregate by name too. So name. And then it aggregates by task name. But this is across all the playbook executions. So it really allows you to get a trending, a pattern, where things are going wrong and such. You might want, if you look at playbook metrics, we might want, oops, unrecognized arguments. Really? Hmm. Uh, uh, oops. Demo gods are not with me. Did I do a typo? No, I did not. Oh, that should have worked. Anyway, um, if you're running Ansible playbooks from different locations, you might want to drill down into a specific location. So you can do that by filtering down by controller. So yeah, I just wanted to give you a quick look at the CLI.
Yes, that is excellent, because I'm glad to have you here for that, for sure.
Happy to help. Let's see the chat. No more questions in the chat. Great.
Not that I'm seeing right now, so. Oh, I think with that, if nothing else, Josh, we want to wrap up for now and for the recording, and we can stick around, or it looks like we got a couple more.
Yeah, I was going to do a last call here.
Yep, there's two more questions.
Yeah, two more.
Jason asks, is it possible to log the Ansible diff mode to ARA without outputting it to the console output? No, not that I know of. So if you don't have --diff in your Ansible playbook command, it's not going to print any diffs, but it's also not going to make them available to ARA. If you do pass --diff, you're going to see them in your console, but you're also going to see them in ARA. I can probably show that to you real quick. Let me go. So actually, this is fairly new, actually, the diff thing. OpenStack Ansible. Click here. Ini file. So this is a loop of the ini file module. So there's several results here. This is the first one, but you can see the diff just like you would have in console. So you can refer to it later if you want to. So hopefully that would answer the question. Next, Nick asks, how resource intensive is the container to run? Well, you don't need to run it at a container if you don't want to. If the API server is not doing anything, it's not going to consume anything. There's not a lot of components to it. It's just a Python application. The demo website that you're seeing has, a lot of playbooks already. How many? Over 2,800 playbooks. And it's actually pretty small, even in size. It's under, I want to say under 1 gigabyte of space, even though it saves the files and everything, because it's optimized to use it as little storage as possible. But it's not taking a lot of RAM. I mean, I can.
Yeah, I'm just curious, resource-wise, like RAM, CPU. I'm assuming it's not super intensive to run this.
On demo.ara, the server is using a little bit under 3 gigs of RAM, but it's also like an entire virtual machine, right? It's not just ARA.
Mm-hmm.
So just the API process itself. Let me see. I mean, there's MySQL running and other things too.
Sure.
But the like MySQL is the thing that is taking the bulk of the RAM. The Python API service doesn't take that much. And then we'll do a last question, and then I'll lend it over to Josh for wrapping up. JXN asks, will the output of the vars defined by vars prompt with hidden display show up in ARA? I'm not sure because I don't use vars prompt personally. So by all means, try it out. And if it doesn't behave the way you think it should, file an issue and we'll check it out.
Yeah, I'd anticipate similar to if it's following the no log, right? If the vars prompt is saying private, you're getting the mechanism from Ansible itself, and just whatever Ansible's giving back to the callback.
Yeah, that's what I would expect. You know, if vars prompt is set up to not print the thing to the console, it should also not make its way to ARA.
Yeah, so I'll just throw a finish up slide, but nothing too crazy. Just want to share that if you did want to get in touch a little bit further, obviously we'll pass this back. I don't know if you've got anything ready, but I know Red Hat for sure, and we've got quite a bit of web presence at network2code.com. If you want to get into a little bit more Ansible in the network space, you can sign up. We have a network automation focused Slack channel that's 100% free. Easiest way to get there is www.ntcslack.com. So with that, I'll stop sharing and let Josh take it the rest of the way.
Yeah, I'm going to do a last call real quick. Any last questions for either Josh or David, or probably less so myself? Otherwise, I'm going to...
We'll stick around after the recording's all off as well, so and talk about anything else.
Yep, I'll drop a quick link in the chat. If you want to stay up to date with ARA, I don't have like a marketing team or anything, and just one person. So when I have like a quick update, I fire a tweet, or there's also IRC and Slack if you're into that, where you can chat and ask questions.
I'll definitely be joining that Slack channel here.